Welcome to the Real Estate PB&J Hour on Money Talk 1310 and 100.9 FM. Rose and Womble Realtor Paul Fuquay is here to share market facts, the fundamentals of selling, buying, owning, and improving your home, plus interesting experts. Now, here is Paul.
Good afternoon, folks. I hope you're enjoying your day. Now that the weather is cleared off, I understand the weekend's going to be very pleasant, and I hope you're going to be able to enjoy it as much as I will, I'm sure. We are going to be discussing today, at some degree of depth, the aspects of what a home inspector will look for when and if you have employed their services in the purchase of a new home or in a pre-listing or inspection, or, as I always advise my clients, at least every 2 or 3 years, spend the $400 or $500 to have your house inspected. I'm joined today as my co-host, none other than the irrepressible Bob Freck, a colleague at Rose and Womble, a good friend that I've known for over 25 years. Was a broker in the state of North Carolina. You were my managing broker there for a little bit.
And you had to wait hours for me to finish that test.
Bob and I tested for our licenses in Carolina together, and I volunteered to drive because I think I had a relatively new Corvette, and we wanted to make a... Where was that test given?
Greensboro or something.
Greenville.
Yes.
Greenville,
yes.
North Carolina. It wasn't that far a drive. You know?
No.
I'm familiar with that now. Anyway.
It took me longer to take the test than it took us to drive down there.
Look, folks, at some point in time, we'll get half liquored up and we'll tell the whole tale. But the purpose of this show is to share real estate news, advice, and experience to help you make sound decisions on one of the biggest investments you'll likely ever make, your home. I know it has been mine. Bob and I have been lucky enough over the years to help hundreds, if not thousands, of buyers and sellers and family members and investors find a house, sell a house, relocate. And it's always been part of our mantra to make certain that we help dispel the many myths and misstatements which seem to filter into almost every discussion among friends about real estate at the back fence or at the kids' soccer game or over a alcoholic libation.
I heard from my neighbor that this house sold for. I heard this, and and Zillow says, and truly, and you're going, okay, well, let's maybe talk some facts.
Well, facts, they kind of clash with opinion when it comes to realtors.
Yes,
and I've never understood that. But one of the things we try and give you is a rundown on the statistics, which can be very boring, can put you to sleep. We try and keep it to a minimum because we know this is drive time, and if you're out there on 64 or 264 or 664, and we start spouting all these numbers, it could put you to sleep. It's bad enough that I'm droning on. But what the other thing we will do today is we will cover again a quick synopsis of the elements of a property which are given value and by how much by an appraiser. Kim and I covered that in the last week's show, and we didn't get through everything, and we'd like to because it segues into, very conveniently, a discussion of home inspections.
Yes.
And we're going to try and continue to make the show relaxed and collegial. We want to be able to offer opinions and experiences that aren't offensive but are relevant if you're in the market.
And relevance based on, between the two of us, we're pushing 50 years of experience doing this.
We've got 50 years of experience.
Yes.
And I'm not saying it's all good, but it's 50.
Well, a lot of times we get the experience by going through the bad and learning the lesson that we hopefully don't repeat again.
The thing you do is you try and avoid the failures of the past.
Correct.
I'd rather launch into new failures than old ones, but there isn't much that's gone under the bridge in terms of real estate flow that we haven't seen.
And until you get to your next transaction, you go, well, I wasn't expecting that one. Where'd that come from?
Yeah, that's why this hour is all about the fundamentals of real estate and what you can do to maximize your ownership and your buying or selling power. Now, if you'd like to talk to us on the air, dial 757-497-1310. I'm going to repeat that, 757-497-1310. You can listen to us live stream on, moneytalk1310.com. We're 1310 AM and we're 100.9 FM. I'll give you my contact information later in the show.
And that phone number really works.
It does.
It
does. The 497. You called in last week.
I did.
2 weeks ago.
And you guys picked up and addressed my question.
You should have seen Dino when he said, "We have somebody named Bob on the line." I thought he was going to. Well, anyway.
Yes.
All right. Now, one of the things market forces, they are changing. They are dynamic, especially right now with the impact of rates and the impact of the paucity of listings. We still don't have a lot of them. We still have demand in this area. We're very fortunate. And Bob's going to share with us some significant information on the status of the housing market, both nationally and regionally. Bob, the mic is yours.
So when we talk about the statistics, you can make numbers say whatever you want. So I'm going to try to keep this generic to kind of give you a feel for what's going on across the country and in Virginia. And then Paul's going to follow up with what's going on local right here in Hampton Roads.
Right.
These numbers are being greatly affected by one issue that's gone on about the last 6 months, and that's been the interest rate.
Right.
The climbing interest rate. Right now, where you're looking at 6 to 7%, anywhere in that range, and also buyers having to pay points, which is extra money up front they have to pay to get those interest rates. So these statistics are being driven by almost that one factor is what's been happening with interest rates.
Yeah, I met with clients today. I'm bringing their house on the market on Thursday. It's a very nice 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhome in Thorogood Colony in Virginia Beach, and it's priced in that sweet spot for what was a sweet spot of $350. And it's got all the goodies: new roof, new HVAC, new water, windows.
Good location.
Man has owned it for 40 years. We brought an inspector in, and he fixed anything and everything the inspector said needed attention. So we anticipate, if we were going on the basis of 6 months ago, that this would evoke a tremendous amount of response. We don't know. And it's somewhat disconcerting considering the fact that he spent this money, and it was not because he hadn't done the work. It was that it never really needed attention until the inspector said, well, by the way, here's something that could be corrected. This is a maintenance item, boom, boom. And he said, I'll take care of it, take care of it. So he's the kind of client seller that realtors love.
Correct.
Because we can price it very appropriately for his market and still make certain that there's sufficient amount of money in there for accommodating any kind of the
and
demands.
They're not being unrealistic
no, very
about
realistic.
The sales price. Correct.
That's the only way to deal with people.
Rule of thumb, with I know some of the folks in our company in Rose and Womble, 10 showings or 2 weeks in the market we're having now, and it's time to do a price reduction.
Exactly.
And you'll hear it called different things, but the bottom line is a price reduction. It's not a price correction. You got to bring the price down.
Right.
Because it's not selling. And we're getting back into that market. We didn't have to do that a year ago. The other market we've gotten back into is open houses.
Yes.
Oh my! Because open houses were our way of life and have been for realtors forever.
Right.
Pandemic came along, open houses dropped to zero.
Right.
People didn't even had a tough time getting into somebody's house to show it without putting booties on and having hand sanitizer and masks and all that. And that didn't even matter if anybody was in the house.
Have you read the disclosure we asked people to sign today on COVID?
Gosh.
It's ridiculous that you're going to either do it for this house or you're going to do it for this day or whatever. It's equivalent to, don't blame me if you catch COVID.
Correct. Yes. Hold harmless. Yeah. So why are we seeing, segueing into statistics, why are we seeing the numbers dropping down on pending home sales, on existing home sales? It's because even though we have open houses coming back into play, we're seeing back to the interest rates going up. And sellers are having to come back into a realistic mindset to sell their houses and start to open up the doors to some of these events that we haven't done for the last couple of years.
Well, I think in part there's a seasonal change. We're in that season. We've seen that for years, where the end of the summer denotes that people were going to back away a little bit, and then it'll pick up again, and it should pick up towards the end of October. I mean, this has been my experience. Carry through the middle of November, then it disappears Thanksgiving in the first week of December. And then you'll have wise buyers out there looking for the deal at the end of the year.
Or the motivated buyers, the ones that have to buy because they've been transferred for a job or
and
whatever it might
get their
be.
Kids in
and
school.
They have to be in a house. They don't want to rent.
Right.
And so for sellers that are maybe going, well, this isn't a good time to put our house on the market, I'll tell you what, with the inventory we have, the low numbers and stuff, it's a great time to put your house on the market.
We'll get to that in a minute. Let's go over this national, because it's intriguing to see how we stack up with other areas of the country.
So, pending home sales, that's sales that have not closed.
Right.
They've gotten to the point in the transaction to where they're not taking any more offers. They've got a ratified, what we call a ratified contract, but they haven't actually gotten to the closing table yet.
Contingency free.
Contingency free, meaning home inspections that we're going to talk about are done. In a lot of cases, it doesn't include the appraisal, but if there's a property owners association, those things have all been taken care of.
Right.
Now we're just waiting for the loan to finish up and the buyer and the seller to get to the closing table. If you look across the country, that number and that percentage has gone down in every area of the country.
For the month of September?
For the month of August and rolling into September.
Okay.
Midwest, in the West has gone, in the Midwest has gone down over 5% pending sales. In the Northeast has gone down 3.5%. In the South has gone down about 1%. Remember, the weather has an impact on home sales. The only place that's gone up month to month is in the West, and it's gone up about 1.5%.
Are we talking about California? Are we talking about the other Western states?
We're talking about in
just
the West.
Region.
No, we're talking Montana to Arizona to Utah to California to Washington. That's a big area.
Yeah,
the national statistics have broken it up into the whole country into 4 areas.
Right.
Okay.
Makes sense. That's the way the NFL is and the NBA.
Yes, and stuff. So you see that. Pending home sales. Now, this is a real shocker, and these are seasonally adjusted numbers.
Right.
Meaning that what Paul had mentioned earlier was sales pick up beginning of the year, they pick up in October, then they drop off in November, December. That doesn't factor in. Seasonally adjusted kind of takes an average and levels all those out. Pending home sales from the National Association of Realtors last month dropped 2%. This is across the board, the entire country.
Right.
And from a year ago has dropped 24%. That's a big number.
Yes.
That's a big. But why? Go back to what we first mentioned, interest rates.
Right.
And what's happened with interest rates.
Plus, I think the fervor of the concern about interest rates dispels some of the attraction of a new home.
Correct.
That's one. And certainly on all the newscasts, every time there's any kind of change in the interest rate, it's ballyhooed about. And I think also a great many people are unwilling to sell their house because they don't have a place to move to.
Correct. Because they're having to look at the same issue, the higher interest rates. There's one number that consistently gets higher despite the drop-off in activity. If we go into existing home sales mean that they've closed.
Right.
Okay. No longer pending, gotten to the closing table, buyers moved in, sellers moved out. These are countrywide again. Month to month, from last month, we've dropped about 4%. Over the last year, we've dropped almost 20% in closed sales across the country. The one number that's not gone down has been the average or the median sales price. That has gone up. That's not surprising. If you went out and tried to buy a new pickup truck a year ago and you went out today to buy the same thing, you're going to pay more for it. So that's not a surprise that prices have still gone up.
But what it's done is it's a double whammy for people who are new to the market, in that they now are confronted with a higher cost per month in terms of their interest and principal payment, and a higher price for the house.
Correct.
So that house, and we've got a chart here. I don't know. We may go into it later in the show on that can tell us what the monthly cost of a loan will be at varying interest rates, and it's quite astounding.
It's getting more expensive.
Yes, it is.
This is an interesting statistic here. These last 3 months, this is June, July, and August.
And we're talking about national. And
we're talking national again, and we're talking average. Average sales price in June across the country was $534,000.
Average, not median.
Not median, okay. Average, okay? In July, that number dropped down to $515,000. Okay. And in August, it dropped down to $504,000.
Do you think that's a consequence of reduction in price, or do you think that the people who were aiming at the $550,000 are now buying at a $400,000?
I think part of it has to do with the fact that sellers are not pricing their houses up way above what the market says. The market has softened.
Right.
Sellers are having to get more realistic. Buyers are not in the same mindset of multiple offers and all these kind of issues.
Right. Well, we used to call that aggressive pricing.
Yes.
And on the reverse, we're now seeing aggressive offers.
Correct.
Where offers are coming in that are below list price, and in some instances substantially, that really don't reflect reality.
Yes.
I mean, we know that there is still a shortage of inventory, and we know, especially in this area, that
Correct.
The demand remains.
So let's take a look at the state of Virginia.
Okay.
So let's bring it in a little bit closer, and I know you're going to cover. Okay. So
Bob, you have 2 minutes to do Virginia, and then we're going to take a break.
That sounds good. In the Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Newport News, in our area, average age of a home buyer is 38 years old. Their average income is about $86,000, and our median value is about $270,000 in the Hampton Roads area. Roll that out to Richmond, the average age of a buyer is 40. Their income is $97,000, bounced up, and their median home price is $302,000.
Right.
So higher, getting over into the Richmond area. Now go up.
How about Northern Virginia? Can't wait for this one.
Yeah, I have the Northern.
Maybe we ought to. Do we want to hold off on Northern Virginia until after the break? What do you think? Okay.
So I'm going to hit one last place, and that's in the southwest corner of the state.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
My favorite.
46 years old is the average age of a home buyer.
Right.
Income $61,000, and median price $157,000. So you can save $100,000.
I'm moving to Pulaski tomorrow.
Go down the southwest corner of Virginia.
Move to Pulaski. Yes. Okay, you're listening to the Real Estate PB&J Hour with Paul Fuqua and Bob Freck, streaming live on MoneyTalk1310.com or 1310 AM FM, AM and 100.9 FM. If you have any questions, call us at 757-497-1310. We'll be here. Look forward to you coming back.
Now back to the Real Estate PB&J Hour on Money Talk 1310 and 100.9 FM. Rosenwomble Realtor Paul Fuqua gives you the fundamentals of real estate selling, buying, owning, and improving your home.
Welcome back from the break. You're listening to the Real Estate PB&J Hour on 1310 AM, 100.9 FM, or streamed live on MoneyTalk1310.com. If you have any questions for me or Bob Freck, please call the station at 757-497-1310. You can do it just to prove that we're live, we're not taped. And as always, you can subscribe and listen to past episodes of the PB&J Hour at your convenience on my YouTube channel, The Real Estate PB&J Hour. I'm certain you'll find it enjoyable. What a wonderful way to spend the evening listening to Paul Fuqua. I'm sorry my wife doesn't listen to me. I got to laugh. I'm asking strangers to listen to me. It's hysterical, folks. I hope don't.
Listen, Deborah listens every time I'm on.
Well,
she does.
Yeah, my wife doesn't.
Well, maybe they need to get together.
I get
Deborah can tell her what we're saying.
And she goes, well, did you make any snafus on the radio? You didn't use any colorful language, did you? I mean, she'll just berate me for hours. Okay, where were we?
Okay,
we were going to talk about
The D.C. area.
Well, no, go again about the southwest corner, Pulaski.
Southwest corner.
Danville
it's Bristol,
Yep.
Bristol, and that kind of segues over into the Tennessee side. So, but down in the very southwest corner.
Wonderful area, by the way.
Yes. So average age of the buyers is 46.
Okay.
And
takes that long to get there.
You used up a few years of your life just driving there and finding it.
Unless you take 81, but that's going to put you in the grave more quickly.
Yes. Average income for a home buyer down there is $61,000, and the median value of the properties is about $158,000.
Right.
Okay. Now let's
Northern
look at
Virginia,
northeast. Average age of the buyer is 40.
Okay.
Their average income, now remember, $61,000 down in the southwest corner.
Right.
Average income in the D.C. area, $133,000.
Is this household income?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yep.
Right.
This is home buyer income.
So it could be an individual.
It could be an individual.
Right.
Yes, correct. And the median value of a house, a property up in the D.C. area, $447,000. Median. So we're talking $300,000 difference, all within our state of Virginia. So we got a lot of options out there. You don't have to go out to the west coast or up northeast and stuff. Right. We've got all these benefits of living in Virginia, and you've got quite a price spread. And here in Hampton Roads,
this is the best buy in the state.
Little over $200,000 for an average. And stuff, and it's just $270,000 for an average.
Look, if you have friends that are coming in, have them call Paul Fuqua, or if you don't want to listen to me prattle on, call Bob Freck. But Fuqua follows Freck.
You're correct. But if his phone is busy or he doesn't have it turned on, give me a call.
Yeah, all right. So we got that, folks. So that's self-promotion.
So we're going to finish up on where are buyers buying houses.
Nationally?
Nationally. Okay. Where are they going to buy it? And that typically is the best deal.
Florida, number one. Got to be.
Florida has 4 of the top 10 cities in the country where people are going down to buy their houses. Fort Myers
got wiped out by the hurricane.
Winter Haven, and now they're going to be struggling down there.
Captiva, there's some great deals.
Palm Bay, Titusville area. And the other one escapes me, Jacksonville. And they got nailed by the hurricane also when it came
Jacksonville really isn't like Florida. I mean, you get to Jacksonville and you think, I'm finally in Florida, but you've got another 8 hours to go before you get to Miami.
I went to college and graduated from Jacksonville University, and it's basically, a lot of people think of it as southern Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like the panhandle of Florida.
But I will tell you, they have improved the traffic flow on 95 to Jacksonville immensely. It used to be just a nightmare.
So where's the other big area where buyers are going to buy is out west. And
but the northwest, right?
We're talking Utah.
All right. Is Utah
Idaho?
Middle, northwest? I don't know.
It's out west.
Okay. That helps.
We're not weathermen here. Okay. Utah again, and Arizona.
Okay.
So you see where they're stuff. So those are 4 of the 10.
Right.
Okay. And actually 5 of the 10. And then the only place on the West Coast that's not in Florida was...
East Coast.
Of the East Coast that was not in Florida was North Carolina.
Right.
And that was the Chapel Hill, Durham area of North Carolina. And that was number 10.
Right. Well, that's the research triangle. There's been tremendous growth in that area for the past 20 years. Yes. And if you've not visited the area, you go into Cary, for instance, where USA Baseball has its facility. Very familiar with that because John was involved. And it's beautiful.
Yes.
But it's also very high end.
Correct.
And it doesn't have...
So you've got the draw of the economics of the job market and what's going on down there. The flip side of that is the cost.
Right.
And coming over to the East Coast versus coming down to Florida and going out west. So,
well, let's talk about our little neck of the woods that I think is probably one of the best areas in the country for variety in terms of water, other aspects of making a life that can be very fulfilling. Where else in the country do you have the Chesapeake Bay? In the Atlantic Ocean.
And the mountains.
And the mountains within an hour and a half.
Yes.
It's like a mini California, but far less onerous in terms of
and the history. The history we have here in the state of Virginia, I mean, phenomenal. You could almost be interested in anything and find it in the state of Virginia.
Yep. All right. As of today, there were 3,925 active residential listings. 3,227 of those are single-family homes, and 696 are attached. So 3,925. And last week, that count was 3,859 of total, 3,177 single families and 682 attached. That represents an increase in listings of 1.7% over. Now, we go week to week, not month to month, week to week. And I'm not going to go back a year because the numbers really don't change significantly. If I go back 2 years, they double. So we've had this huge fall off. Now, the number of properties actually available out of those 3,925, these are ones that are not under contract, not in a situation where a home inspection is pending or a homeowners association disclosure is not pending. That's 3,110. So you see the gap. We really have available 3,110 single-family homes.
Well, and what's interesting on these...
total homes.
Yes.
Total homes.
What's interesting on these statistics is that number typically has... our inventory has gone down. All of a sudden...
It's bumping up by 1%.
Inventory is going up.
But we're still talking month to month or week to week. I'm giving you week to week because we hope that there's a continuity to listenership out there. Now, the number of actual closed sales in October's first week, that number is 478, and the count that I have for closed sales in September is 3,091. But that can change. It's funny how they look at that. Sometimes houses will close at the end of September, but it won't go through the cycle until a week later, 10 days later.
And they won't do their seasonal adjustments and all that kind of stuff till you get further away from that number.
And so we know this, that under the RAIN, Real Estate Information Network statistics, all of August, the closed sales were 2,939. So we've gone up in September. In July, 2,826, so we've gone up. And June, however, 3,984. So you saw the biggest drop in terms of closed sales was June to July. But that's seasonal as far as I'm concerned.
Right, that's where you start to get into seasonal, because even September, remember, August, September, people need to be in schools. You have your military moves and the end of your financing for all. So you see a lot of activity going on in that August, September timeframe.
We want to stress to you that all these statistics are volatile in scope. They change minute to minute, almost like the rates. As things happen. For instance, I'm putting 2 listings on the market this week, and I don't know what I'll have the week after or the week after that. But what I found is when I put these listings on, they're prepared as these sellers have prepared the homes, they go very quickly.
Correct.
And the other thing is they understand the statistics, so they're not overpriced, they're not aggressively priced, but they're priced for the best return for buyer and seller alike.
One of the numbers that you shared early on in our local statistics was the difference in available properties for single family versus attached.
Right.
A lot of our buyers are in a price range now with these elevated interest rates that's pushing them into attached properties to buy.
The condos and the townhouses.
Townhouses and stuff like that. And when you look at out of that 3,800, almost 3,900 that were out there, only 680 were attached.
Right.
And so that makes it difficult on a buyer in that price range to find a good property in an attached type of property and in a good area and stuff. So sometimes those properties end up with multiple offers on them because they're hard to find. So folks, always remember, if you have any question about what we're rattling on about, please call 757-497-1310. We'll be more than happy to explicate further what we're talking about. So how about if I call that number right now? Well, I can ask you what you're rattling on about. And Dino will say, wait, we got another call from Bob.
Bob. Oh, my. Okay. Now, last week, Kim was here, and we talked about the values that appraisers use, or the elements of value that appraisers use in comparing a sold house that they're going to appraise for the lender with their comparables. And a quick review, the key elements of square footage, garage and its footage, the age of the property, the exterior, what its exterior covering is. The bedroom count is, of course, one of the primary factors. Size, age, bedroom count, bath count. What kind of HVAC system is in place. If it's geothermal, that's the largest increase in value, and it's also the largest decrease in value when compared to a comp. Meaning, yes, we have a $400,000 house down the street. Your house has been sold within the 3 days after the one down the street sold, and that one has a geothermal system. Well, that's a deduction of $10,000 generally off their price, and that's the way these appraisers do it. $400,000 sold property, that's now on record. Here they've got another house that's $400,000, and they're going to deduct or add on to that value. You've got a larger lot that might be worth $10,000 back into theirs. So the adjustments are made to the other properties, and that's how you read an appraisal. Look at it, bing, right, bing, bing, bing. You'll see it's either a plus or a minus in order to come with a number.
Correct, and they reconcile.
Yes.
They reconcile on an appraisal. Remember, of all of this list of adds and subtracts on an appraisal, the most important one is the location. Because if you take two identical houses that have everything inside and outside identical, lot size, everything, and you move it to a different location within Hampton Roads, you can see a significant change in what the value is. So that location, again, drives value, usually as your number one factor.
We realize that they are restricted under the guidelines to a maximum radius, I think, of 3 miles to find comparable houses unless it's unique. So yes, you have two neighborhoods.
Unique means rare.
Rare.
Yes, rare.
Right. Rare in terms of settled sales, not in terms of the actual property.
Correct.
Because I had a golf course property that sold at a very high premium because of its location on a particular part of the golf course.
Yes.
And the appraiser couldn't find anything similarly situated within a 3-mile range, within a 5-mile range. He had to go all the way up to the north end of Virginia Beach for houses that were far, far more... they were far larger and demanding more money, but he could make the adjustment against those sales and apply it to this,
and get it past the underwriter.
Past the underwriter.
That's the key. Is that appraiser has got to be able to justify their adjustments. And get it past the underwriter.
The underwriters for lenders, they review everything with a fine-tooth comb. Those
Correct.
people, they're green eye. They wear those green eye shades and have suspenders, male or female alike, and they work in those back rooms with all manner of things.
Talking about suspenders.
Bobby, he's ever the pessimist. You know how you define a pessimist? A pessimist has a belt and suspenders.
Yeah, I forgot my belt. I forgot the belt. I can't believe it. I was in a hurry.
All right. So the elements that we talk about in terms of value that an appraiser look like, he'll look at the pool. If you have a pool, he'll look at your lack of a pool in a neighborhood that everybody else has a pool.
Yes. And a quick plug for using a local lender. When you start using these, we used to call them the .com lenders.
Yeah, they're still out there.
Depending on where that underwriter is in the country, that can have a big impact on how they evaluate the appraiser's appraisal.
Right.
Because when they don't know the area, they don't know the difference between Virginia Beach and Norfolk and Chesapeake.
Or neighborhood to neighborhood
and stuff. So, when you're out there as a buyer looking to select a lender, golly, 25 to 30 years of doing this myself and yourself doing it almost as long, get a local lender that, number one, has some skin in the game, They're not a big name lender where they don't have to go out and knock on doors and actually earn the business, and they know the local area. It's really important as a buyer for making that
I attended
work.
a seminar yesterday that was very useful that we'll discuss a little bit. We've got about a minute and a half left before we have to take a break. But the underwriter has discretion, and we were really zeroing in on VA underwriters,
yes.
or VA appraisers and VA loans, which tend to be the most stringent, rightfully so, because you're providing 100% lending.
Yes.
And the underwriters it used to be that underwriters could have the opportunity to bump a value about 5% over what the appraiser came in.
Yes.
Now that has to go to the region office, and if it's even more than that, it has to go to the central office, and takes 6 to 8 weeks for that to happen on a central.
And that scares a lot of sellers.
Right.
Away from
VA loan.
A VA loan and a buyer that comes in with a VA loan. So keep that in mind. If you have a choice between using your VA eligibility or using a conventional loan, sometimes the numbers work out the same and even better.
Right.
And it'll look better often coming in our area with a conventional loan.
Folks, we're going to take a little break. You're listening to the Real Estate PB&J Hour with Paul Fuqua and Bob Freck, streaming live on MoneyTalk1310.com or 1310 AM, 100.9 FM. If you have any questions, reach us at 757-497-1310 or contact us at PaulFuquaRealtor.com. We'll take a few minutes to let our supporters and sponsors have their way. Be back.
Now back to the Real Estate PB&J Hour on Money Talk 1310 and 100.9 FM. Rosenwomble Realtor Paul Fuqua gives you the fundamentals of real estate selling, buying, owning, and improving your home.
This is Paul Fuqua. I'm here in the studio with, of course, Dino Franza, my spectacularly successful and wonderful producer, and we have Bob Freck, my colleague in arms at Rosenwomble. We have a lot of experience to offer ourselves.
We do.
I don't know if it helps you out there, but we can certainly laugh at some.
Or we can help them if they call us.
Unfortunately, we were scheduled to have Greg Murphy of Coastal Inspection Services on today. He's been on the show before. He's a very, very good spokesperson for the home inspection business and industry. Unfortunately, he was diagnosed with COVID this morning and had to bail. And
hasn't been in touch with any of us.
No.
So we're okay still.
We are, and that's a miracle. But basically, Bob and I have had enough experience that we know some of the foibles and some of the problems of home inspections. I can tell funny stories like finding a snake and having a home inspector make tracks across the subdivision because he didn't want to see the snake.
Or out from underneath the crawl space.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yes.
Just ashen-faced. But the first question I always like to ask home inspectors, and Bob, I'm going to ask you, what do you think are the most common problems you find when you tour a prospective listing or as a resale property? What do you immediately see? Now, I'm not asking you to be a home inspector. You're a realtor. Well, other than the smell in the house, what do you see, and what do you tell them this is something we should look at?
I start by prioritize them. I look at what's the condition of the house.
I want to know. I don't want to know about I want to know what you see as a common problem. You've listed, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of houses. If you could say the one thing I've seen most often that I can always look for and generally find if it's there is this.
I'm going to put a twist on that.
Okay.
Because I can name several items that always come up on a property inspection.
Okay.
But they're not necessarily things that I'm qualified to look at. One of them is a mismatch between the circuit breaker size and the panel
and the HVAC.
And the HVAC, which is the heating and air conditioning system. Right. And they almost never match up. And especially if you've got a new system that's just put in, because the HVAC folks, the heating and air folks, never go and look at the circuit breaker panel and make sure that what's in the circuit breaker panel matches what the manufacturer requires for the heat and air.
It's generally off by 10 amps.
Yes, correct. And it's like, and so
if it's supposed to be 60, they'll be 50, or if it's supposed to be 40, they'll be 50.
Correct.
Or, there's always
they don't
something.
match, and
right.
So it gets hit. The other thing gets hit in the same subject is the platform that the outside compressor is sitting on.
It's not
if it's
level.
not level, oh my God, yes, okay. It's not like we haven't seen. And you always get hit on it not being level because it affects the overall life expectancy of the unit when it's sitting there all cocked all over the place and stuff. So that's...
I love it when a homeowner tells me, well, it's been like that since we moved in.
Correct.
I say, well, didn't you have a home inspection? No, we didn't.
Or if they bought during the first boom, no, they didn't have a home inspection because they waived it. And if they...
Or their home inspector didn't tell them about it. Or they say they didn't tell them. And then I said, by the way, you have a copy of that home inspection? There it is. Boom.
Correct.
And they didn't ask for it to be correct.
Correct. And stuff. So they've lived with it. And it's kind of like, well, it's always worked. It's always been that way. But that gets hit. The other thing that gets hit that we don't see coming in and looking is when the inspector pulls the cover off the electrical panel and sees overfused, underfused breakers, meaning the breaker doesn't match the size of the wire that's in the box.
Right. Or
you've got double tap breakers. And there's a lot of technicality that goes into that a good home inspector will know. But and what you, referencing what you said early on in the program, was taking the time every 2-3 years or whatever to get a professional inspector, come in, pay them to do a full-blown inspection and look at these things to keep it from coming up, especially if you're getting ready to sell and put your house on the market. Pay the money, get it done, get those things fixed.
I will tell a very short tale. I had a client. It was a beautiful home. He had 2 younger children, and they were twins, and they shared the room over the garage. And they hadn't been feeling well, and we were doing a pre-listing inspection because they were moving to a house that I'd found at the beach for them. And the home inspector came down out of the attic, somewhat concerned, stating that and asking if any of the kids had been feeling badly. And
you're going to talk about asbestos?
Yeah, and she said, yeah. Our twins have not really been the same over the past couple of weeks. Well, it turns out one of the flues for the furnace and or the hot water heater, I don't remember which, had become detached.
Yes.
And there was a buildup of carbon monoxide in that thing, and it was affecting those children.
Correct.
So, that pre-listing inspection may have saved lives. I'm not sure. I'm not going to take credit for that. But it did solve a problem that had come up in terms of a health situation.
Yes.
So that was a pre-listing inspection. And I learned then that it's worth it because houses are machines. They break. Things wear out.
They get old, yes.
They get old. And you want to know where you are.
Correct.
And the only way to do that is to have it inspected by someone. And you can bring in a friend, you can bring in a builder, you can bring in a plumber, an electrician, whomever you'd like. But I feel quite strongly that if you bring a home inspector in, you're going to follow a regimen that he has been taught and he has to follow in order to provide the proper information.
And always bring in a third party. If you want somebody to come in and look at your HVAC system, don't bring in your HVAC. They're going to come in and go, oh, yeah, everything's fine.
Yep.
They're not going to come in and shoot themselves in the foot and tell you, oh, well, you got this problem.
Especially is that true with termite and moisture?
Yes. Bring in a third party that doesn't have an interest in it because you're their customer,
right?
And get a good look at what's going on. Another item that comes up often in older homes, and let me tell you, older can be, 50s and older.
They call that mid-century now.
Yeah, well, and that's where we are. We're kind of mid, and we're in the last chapter of our, but an item that comes up is the good old A word, asbestos.
Oh, yeah.
And let me tell you, it's fairly obvious in an older home because it looks like plaster of Paris, and you'll find it not only in the crawl spaces, but you'll find it in the attic. And sometimes those pipes that have asbestos on are buried back in the corners, and when you look back in there and you see something that looks like plaster of Paris,
it's asbestos.
It's asbestos, and that will cause a problem. There are some home inspectors that when they look under the crawl,
they will not go under.
They will not go under, and that'll end the inspection right there because they will not be able to finish the inspection because they look under and they see that and they go, not going under.
Because they didn't have, they call it friable. Right?
And friable just means that
it's flaking.
It can, and listen, just crawling underneath a house in a tight crawl and hitting the asbestos on the pipes that are wrapped can release.
You know, I'm at an age where, in my past, because I was a car guy, I did a lot of brake jobs on the side to make a little extra money, and I hate to think of how many particles of asbestos I ingested or inhaled during those, because that's what your brake pads were made of. And I guess they still are, for all I know, but it's a lot simpler. You don't have all that dust inside the drum now. You got it on your wheels.
Yes. Another simple thing for a homeowner to make sure it doesn't get hit on an inspection is light bulbs and light fixtures. You don't want an inspector coming in, flipping a switch, and the light doesn't come on.
He's going to note it.
He's going to note it, and it's a burned-out light bulb. The other thing that gets hit very often is 3-way and 4-way switches on light switches when they're not wired properly. Homeowner is, Mr. Electrician, and puts in a 2-way switch where it's supposed to be a 3-way, and so you go to the front door and you turn the hall light on. It works. You get to the end of the hall, you expect to be able to turn it off with that other switch, and it doesn't turn off.
Yep.
Okay, how many times have we seen that? And that's a simple thing for a homeowner to look at and go, okay, this isn't done right.
Speaking of switches, I'll bring up one, and the homeowner, not the homeowner, but the home inspector was somewhat chagrined. I sold a house that a builder built, and one of his features was the fabled Christmas lights. And for those of you who don't know what a Christmas light is, it's a socket, it's a receptacle in the center of every window on the front of a house.
Yes.
Including the windows if they are there on a side load garage. And it's one receptacle, and it's all controlled by one switch.
Yes.
And then Vern Howard built houses, and that was one of his features. It was telltale. You had to have the Christmas light switch. And I've had home inspectors try to flunk an inspection because they couldn't get any live reading out of all these outlets underneath every window in the front of the house. And the larger the house, the more the windows. And they become upset when you say, "Oh, that's a Christmas light." What do you mean a Christmas light? Because that's an older element.
Yes.
It's not done anymore, to my knowledge.
Well,
and they always hid it in the laundry room, or someplace strange where you could, so that people couldn't inadvertently turn off.
It's like hiding a GFCI.
Yes.
And you lose power. I always encourage one of my sellers to be present for the property inspection. And I try to encourage the person who has the most knowledge about the workings of the house, so that when the inspector goes over and flips that switch and doesn't get power, the homeowner can go over and go, that goes to the outlet.
Bob, I understand that but the way I handle that is my sellers are heavily counseled by me to have a pre-listing inspection where we can handle all
Yes, correct.
So that we don't have any surprises.
Correct.
Because when there's a home inspection that has been paid for and is being monitored by a buyer, I don't want my seller there, because I've seen them get red under the collars.
It can get ugly.
It's become down to almost fisticuffs.
Yes.
Because the homeowner is insulted that his wiring was not professional. Well, you double tapped half the leads in here, but this is a fire hazard, and not only that, and the inspector gets huffy, and the seller gets. So I say, look, let's resolve this. Let's get this inspector.
A good inspector is really. They're very good at how they.
Beings.
Well, and they're good at how they present their findings to the homeowner and to the buyer without alarming the buyer or the seller. They're really, really good at doing that.
Yeah, and they're few and far between.
Yes, they are.
I'm sorry. Maybe it's because I'm confrontational myself, but there have been times when I can understand why a seller has become irate at a home inspector, because the home inspector has come out with a blatant statement, and that is not quite true.
Like, I wouldn't buy this house if I were...
I throw them out.
Yes.
I threw one guy. I said, "I'm terribly sorry. This inspection is over.
Correct.
I will pay..." I mentioned this to the buyer's agent. I will pay for any other inspector. I don't want this guy here.
Correct. So if you're using Paul or myself as your buyer's agent, we've screened and vetted an awful lot of property inspectors, and we know the ones who address the issues that need to be addressed and don't do it in an alarming way that alarms the buyer or the seller.
Well, we've only touched on this, and I love the whole idea of inspections. I especially think it's important for you as a homeowner to have your home inspected on a regular basis.
You and I have learned more about our houses by attending home inspections on other houses than we ever would have done in any other job.
But we're now run out of time. So I know I speak for Bob when I thank you for joining us for another episode of the Real Estate PB&J Hour. We've laughed a little bit, and we haven't engaged in fisticuffs. We hope you enjoyed the broadcast and know a little more about the market. Especially, you don't want to move to Northern Virginia unless you're rolling in cash.
High income.
Yeah. If you have questions or interested in discussing a topic we have not covered or would like to talk about buying or selling them, give me a call. My name is Paul Fuqua, 757-449-7463 or paulfuquarealtor.com. Now, you can listen to past episodes and subscribe to my YouTube channel, The Real Estate PB&J Hour. And again, I want to thank you, Bob, for being. You're always fun to be with. And quickly, how's your wife's book doing?
She's getting published her second book. It should come out next year, mid next year, on her second book, poetry book coming out.
That's tremendous.
Finishing Line Press. It'll be out next year.
All right, folks, have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the Thursday night football and whatever you're going to do. Adios until next week. Same time, same place, 1310 AM, 100.9 FM, the Real Estate PB&J Hour. Good night.